Today's reading is Genesis 11, verse 27 to Genesis 12, verse 9. This is the account of Terah's family line. Terah became the father of Abram, Nahor, and Haran, and Haran became the father of Lot. While his father Terah was still alive, Harran died in Ur of the Chaldeans, in the land of his birth. Abram and Nahor both married. The name of Abram's wife was Sarai, and the name of Nahor's wife was Milkah. She was the daughter of Harran, the father of both Milkah and Iskah. Now Sarai was childless, because she was not able to conceive. Terah took his son Abram, his grandson Lot, son of Harran, and his daughter-in-law Sarai, the wife of his son Abram, and together they set out from Ur of the Chaldeans to go to Canaan. But when they came to Harran, they settled there. Terah lived 205 years and died in Harran. The Lord had said to Abram, "Go from your country, your people, and your father's household to the land I will show you. I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse. And all peoples on earth will be blessed through you." So Abram went as the Lord had told him, and Lot went with him. Abram was 75 years old when he set out from Harran. He took his wife Sarai and his nephew Lot, all the possessions they had accumulated, and the people they had acquired in Harran, and they set out for the land of Canaan, and they arrived there. Abram travelled through the land as far as the site of the great tree of Moreh at Shechem. At that time the Canaanites were in the land. The Lord appeared to Abram and said, "To your offspring I will give this land." So he built an altar there to the Lord who had appeared to him. From there he went on towards the hills east of Bethel and pitched his tent, with Bethel on the west and Ai on the east. There he built an altar to the Lord and called on the name of the Lord. Then Abram set out and continued toward the Negev.
So we're going back to the beginning, but to get there, I want to talk to you about one of the fears I have, which is the fear of roller coasters. People have different reaction to roller coasters. Some will say, "Yay, I can't wait. So let's go to the biggest, the worst, the quickest." And then there's a picture on the screen that if you could get me on one, I would look a bit more like that. That's a wonderful picture that the internet is good for some things. And that is finding pictures just like that. People have very different, we better take it off, it's been a distraction. People have very different reactions to roller coasters. But I want to tell you that from the beginning of the Bible, it is a roller coaster. Just in case you've forgotten, this is what's happened. The direction of the roller coaster from the beginning is not up and down. It's been downward from a beautiful peak of creation. Genesis 1, Genesis 2. God has created a good world. He's demonstrated and exercised his power not because he needs to, but because he chose to. And he spoke into being a world with such intricacy and beauty and magnificent that it displays his power. And that's just the work of his fingertips, says the psalmist. But from that point, it's a downhill journey of wickedness, of deceit. By the chapter 3 and into chapter 4, the descent is picking up speed. By chapter 3, we now turn our back on God, our good, loving creator, in what has been described as the fall. It's a way of describing the roller coaster of history. Adam and Eve, our first parents, turn their back on God, their loving maker. By the time you get to chapter 4, we read of the first murder. By the time we get to chapter 6, wickedness has become so great, the descent has become so steep and so fast and so far from what God has made. He says, "Enough, my heart is grieved." Genesis chapter 6, verse 4, "My heart is grieved with the wickedness of humanity," the wickedness of humankind. "I'm going to recreate the world. Just as I created the world through water and then there was land, I'm going to send water, the water of a flood, to destroy the world so that we can start over again. New creation. I'm going to start with a man called Noah and his family." And yet even through Noah and his family, the descent sadly goes further still and further away from what God intended. God's judgment of sin through the waters of the flood will be, however, a showcase for his mercy. A showcase for his mercy. And then we get to Genesis 11 and 12. Genesis 11 and 12, again, we have God rebooting, not a computer, but the whole world. It's impossible to overstate the significance of these verses in terms of the whole Bible story that you can call redemptive history. These sentences are so significant. This family of what we will soon describe are actually idolaters, are so significant and foundational to the journey that leads us to Jesus throughout history. And yet, what does God do as a display of his mercy? He calls these uniquely idolatrous people to himself in a very unique way. This is called the call of Abraham. If you look at the non-inerrant, the error-filled titles in your Bible, but it's helpful in this instance because God does something to rescue a people for himself. Abraham is not unique. Like every Christian, a Christian is someone who's heard God's call and embraced it. And I want to think about the power of it, the nature of it, and how you can receive it perhaps for the first time. Okay, the power of it, the nature of it, and how you can receive it for the first time. Now let's get into it. Number one, the power of the call that Abraham and every Christian receives. Now in the midst of the chaos, in the midst of the descent on our roller coaster going downhill rapidly, there was one family at the end of Genesis chapter 4 who called on the name of the Lord. And that's a Hebrew way of saying they worshipped the God of the Bible. It was Seth's family, and in Seth's family alone, there was preserved the true knowledge of the true God. It's a family line that runs, a line of hope, a line of redemption that runs right through the Bible. But in Seth's family alone was true knowledge of God, and it was passed on from Seth down the family line to Abraham's dad, who was called Terah. You need to spell it correctly without getting scared. And that's why we read one of the 10 totalidotes, the 10, this is the generation, this is the account of that you read through in the book of Genesis. The book of Genesis is divided into 10 big sections where you can read this sentence that you see in chapter 11, verse 27. This is the account, not of creation. This is the account, not of Adam. This is the account of Terah. Terah. The name Terah means moon. Very interesting. You can see on the screen a journey. Of the Chaldeans, bottom right-hand corner that Reuben read so clearly and well. He deserved a round of applause. That's where Abram and his family grew up. Terah meaning moon, and Abram were brought up in the center of Ur of the Chaldeans. That's Mesopotamia, that's modern-day Iraq. You could jump on a plane this afternoon and you could journey to Iraq. In other words, what we need to understand if we do a little bit of digging is that Abraham, who we know is the hero of so much of the Bible story, grew up as a moon worshipper. He grew up as someone who was unfamiliar with the things of God. If you turn to the book of Joshua, chapter 24, and read verse 2, it says this: Long ago, your forefathers, even Terah, Abraham, and Nahor, they lived beyond the river and they worshipped other gods. In other words, Abraham, who's one of the heroes of the Bible, the man of faith, he grew up as an idolater. He grew up as a moon worshipper in Ur of the Chaldeans. Here's the family through the line of Seth, with Terah his father, Abraham, one of 3 sons. Here is the last hope of humanity. Here is the flame of faith, and it's flickering out. It's almost snuffed out altogether. Unless God does something, his plan of redemption will be ruined. It will be brought to nothing. And if that's not enough, chapter 11, verse 30, we note that Sarai is barren. And in a lovely way of Hebrew redundancy, let me say it again. She had no children. Well, I got you the first time, but that's the point of Hebrew, to say there is no opportunity for God to fulfill his redemption of his people unless something uniquely powerful happens. We're at death's door. We have a barren husband and wife, and they're knocking on a bit. They're 75 years old. They're ready to withdraw their pension if they haven't done so already. In other words, spiritually, with the physical situation that Abraham and Sarai find themselves in, they're just about to hit a dead end. The flame of faith is flickering, and it's absolutely over. And then God speaks. And as God speaks, everything changes. Now, for many years, I thought wrongly that Abraham was sort of a Bedouin, bit of a hippie on a camel living in tents. I thought he was like a nomad. But if you look at the next slide here, this is what we're talking about in Ur of the Chaldeans. This is an AI-generated image of if you were to travel to Iraq 4,000 years ago. This is Ur of the Chaldeans, and it's very important that we get into this a little bit. Ur of the Chaldeans, it would have housed 30,000 people in a walled citadel of 220 hectares. That's roughly the size of Hampton Court. At its center was this vast temple that you can see on the next screen to the moon god who happened to be called Sin. Now that's kind of ironic. The culture of Mesopotamia that you can see with a bottom right-hand corner, this is Abraham's possible housing situation. It was a glorious culture of craftsmanship. It was a glorious and significant culture of medicine and technology and music and construction. And if you don't believe me, go up to the British Museum on the first floor and you will see intricate carpentry. You will see board games. You will see a culture that's very, very different from my wrong understanding of what it was like for Ur of the Chaldeans and what it was like for Abram and Terah to live there. And here's the question that this passage asks us as we get into it a little bit. What led Abraham to leave that? What caused Abraham to renegotiate in his heart and spirit to say, I will no longer live for the god Sin. I will no longer worship idolatrously the moon. What caused the change in Abraham? What caused him to up sticks and move to a place that he didn't know where he was heading? In Acts chapter 7, verse 2, we have a recorded sermon of Stephen, one of the first martyrs. He's preaching to a group of people that included Saul, who wanted to kill as many Christians as he could. And in Acts chapter 7, verse 2, it's on the screen, we read this sentence. Stephen preaching says, brothers and fathers, listen to me. The God of glory appeared to our father Abraham while he was still in Mesopotamia, before he lived in Harran. Now, what are we to learn here? Remember the map, remember the journey. We'll see the map again shortly. Abraham was part of this wealthy family. He was part of this family of resources and renown. He lived in this culture of technology and medicine and carpentry and culture. He was part of the line of Seth, the best family on earth, the God-fearing family. But if it wasn't for God, this is what the Bible's teaching us. He was spiritually dead. If it wasn't for God's initiative, he was spiritually dead. Friends, the Christian faith is never inherited. This is one of the lessons from Abraham. At the other end of the school, there are 20 respectable-looking young people. They look pretty respectable when they're old enough. They attend school in the home or sent out of home into local schools. They have parents. I know most of you. Most of them love them all the time. Some of you love them some of the time. But we've got 20 children down the other end of the school hall. They have parents who love them. They have a family who prays for them. They have leaders who plan for them, who prepare, who pray and deliver gospel teaching every week. But, says the Bible, just like Abraham, unless every single one of them hears the call of God in the gospel, they will remain respectable-looking idolaters. They need to hear the call of the gospel upon their hearts, personally. Unless the gospel comes in and disturbs them, unless God's grace comes in, unless they hear the gospel by the mercy and kindness of God, unless God convicts them and humbles them and shakes them and disturbs them that this world is not all it's cracked up to be, that this world is not all there is, they will remain in their sin and remain little respectable looking idolaters, just like Terah's son Abram. They will take a good thing, take off one letter from that word, and they'll make it into a God thing. They'll live for education, they'll live for money, they'll live for respectability, they'll live by themselves. They'll live for something else other than God and make it into what their life is all about. And unless God comes in and disturbs them, disrupts them, and shows them their sin, they will settle down and they will live the priorities of this world rather than living for the city and priorities of King Jesus. So the call of God is absolutely necessary. The call of God is not just necessary for someone to become a Christian, whether it's Abraham or you or me. The call of God is absolutely necessary and gracious. It's what transforms someone. It's what changes someone. It's what completely causes someone to live for something and turn and live for something or someone else. It's the powerful call of God. In the middle of moon worship, in the dead end of barrenness, what happens? God speaks. And just as he did in the beginning, in the first sentence of the Bible, he speaks and he brings about new life. He speaks into dead, barren Abraham and Sarah and brings new life. It's the merciful call of God, and there's hope again in the world because God's call has unique, saving, life-giving power, and we all need to hear it. But what does it look like? What's its nature? Okay, it's powerful, but what does that mean? What's the content? Well, let's look at that secondly. The nature of the call. Look at chapter 12, verses 1 to 3, very famous sentences. Leave your country, your people, and your father's household, and go to the land I will show you. I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you I will curse, and all peoples on earth will be blessed through you. Now this is radical in three ways at least. Number one, notice God's call comes to Abraham and it's personal. It's personal. Look at the first sentence also. Leave your country. That's, I think I've said this before, that's the NIV language. The old King James has this great translation where it says, get thee out. You want to say it in a northern accent, get thee out. There's two Hebrew words here that are put together. We make three words out of it in English, go figure. But this is what God says to Abraham, go yourself out. Get yourself out. Do you know why? Well, look at verse 31 of Genesis chapter 11. Terah took his son Abram, his grandson Lot, son of Harran, and his daughter-in-law Sarai, the wife of his son Abram, and together they set out from Ur of the Chaldeans to go to Canaan. But when they came to Harran, they settled there. Here we go. This is not just a U-Haul van. This is not a hire situation. This is a massive enterprise of an estate. This would take significant organization. This would be a caravan in the traditional use of that word, not something you take for a weekend away. This is a significant undertaking of a significant household of large families with servants, with resources, with stuff that needs itemization. This takes organization. But look at what happened. We're going to journey, says Terah. We're going to journey. We're going to journey to Canaan. That's what we've been told to do. But verse 31 says, but when they set out from Ur and the Chaldeans, long journey to Canaan, they stopped at Harran. Now, why did they stop there? God said, I'm going to take you to Canaan. Well, they stopped there, I think, because they didn't want to go any further. They settled down. They stopped at Harran. They put down roots. They put their kids into schools. They bought a place. They reduced their mortgage. They formed relationships. I was going to say they bought a car, but they couldn't do that. But you know what I mean? They would have got the latest electric model camel that got them from A to B. They would have planted crops. They settled down where they should not have settled down. And that's why God comes and says to Abraham for a second time, leave your country. He doesn't just say get thee out. He says get yourself out. You can imagine Abraham saying back to God, so to speak, my family have come halfway. This is as far as Dad and Nahor and everyone else wants to go. They like it in Harran. It's got good prospects, good schools, good networks. Trains, when they'll be built, they'll be fast as well. They want to settle down here. So what does God say to Abraham? Then come yourself. Then come yourself. Friends, being a Christian is personal. It has to be your faith. You can't follow God through association. I'm here because my mum and dad are Christian. I'm here because my grandparents were Christians. The Christian faith, the call of God for every single person, has to be personal. But it's not just personal. It's not just for you. It's not just information you need to receive. It's for your heart. That's the second thing to understand. The call of God is not just personal and not just for your ears. It's not just information or content or data. It's for your heart. What do I mean? At the very core of what it means to be a Christian, to receive the call of God, is you have to surrender your will. You have to surrender your will. Look at verse 1. There's a place here at the start of Genesis 12 that's very open-ended. And for us Westerners, it's very uncomfortable. Get out of your country, to paraphrase, your people and your father's household, and go to the land that I will show you. God does not say, here are the coordinates. This is where we're going. God does not say, here are the what three words, so that you don't get lost. He says to Abraham, this is where I want you to go. Get out, and I'll show you later. Get out. I'm not telling you where you're going, but I will tell you later. Get out of the place of security. Get out of the culture that you're familiar with. Leave your respectable, walled, bricked up house, and now you're going to have to live in tents for a long time. Leave the comfort behind and go to a place. Where am I going? I will tell you later. You need to trust me. Very often in the modern world, we have a qualified obedience, even as Christians. I'll follow you, Lord, if you show me exactly where I'm going to go. I'll follow you, Lord, if you give me the cost of what it will cost me to follow you. If you say to God, I'll follow you if, I'll follow you when, you're not answering God's call. And you're not following the God of the Bible. You're still in charge of your life. You're not surrendering your will. But look at what Abraham does. He doesn't say, I will go if. I'll go when you provide. I'll go if you make your promises certain and secure. I'll go if what you're calling me to do makes sense to me. God says to Abraham, get out. Abraham says, where? I'll show you later. Just go. Later in the story of Abraham, in Genesis chapter 22 and beyond, God says, go to the top of a mountain and take your son of promise and be prepared to sacrifice him. Why? Abraham may have said, well, I'll just show you later. Just climb. Friends, that's Christianity. And that's Christianity. It's uncomfortable, it's unique, it's costly, and it's radical. But God always keeps his promises. I remember being very helped by a message that Tim Keller gave on this passage. And he tells the difference between two books, two storylines. One is an adventure and one is a quest. An adventure like the famous 5. An adventure tells you to go somewhere and it's there and back again, often in a day. Often there's not much danger. There's just a shadow at the door, something like that, in an age-appropriate way. But an adventure is something you choose. An adventure is something you choose. It's a place you go. You have your adventures and your thrills. It kind of spices up your life a little bit. And then you come home and put your head on your pillow and pick your life up where you left it. That's an adventure. An adventure is go there and come back again. But a quest is different. When you go on a quest like the Lord of the Rings, or you go on a quest to try and liberate Europe from the hands of an enemy, a quest is not there and back again. A quest is bigger. A quest could cost you your life. If you do come back from the quest, you're so changed, you never quite fit in. You're changed by the quest. You're changed radically. You're not the way you are. Christianity is a quest. It's not an adventure. Christianity is a quest where God says to each one of us, get out, and I'm not going to tell you where you're going. Get out and be radically changed. Don't ask whether I'm about to do something that fits into your agenda. I'm going to give you a completely new agenda. I'm going to make your life bigger. I'm going to make it more fulfilling. I'm going to make it more challenging and difficult at points. Don't ask how God will enrich your life. Christianity is a whole new life. What does it mean to answer the call? It means to get out, not knowing where you're going, but trusting God. Hebrews 11 verse 8 summarizes it like this. We read it at the start of our service. Hebrews 11 verse 8. God said to Abraham, get out. And so he went out, not knowing where he was going. Friends, you're not a Christian until you've taken your hands off your life that God has given you anyway. It's that radical. And so Genesis 12 verse 4 is one of the most remarkable sentences in the whole Bible. So Abraham left. So Abraham left as the Lord had told him, and Lot went with him. And by the way, he was 75 years old. No settling down for him, because the call of God came on his life. New priorities as well. Here's the third thing. It gives you new priorities, receiving the call of God. In Genesis chapter 11, the Tower of Babel is recorded in human history. God's people have moved out from the east of Eden and they're gathering together. Genesis chapter 11 says they're looking for safety. And so they gather together. Let's make a name for ourselves. Let's make ourselves secure. It was a city of the self. It was a city with humans' agenda at its core. But God's agenda is completely different. God's agenda is service, not self. So look at verse 7 of Genesis chapter 12. I will bless you so that you might be a blessing, because through you all of the families and peoples of the earth will be blessed. The contrast is there intentionally. Name, nation, security, blessing. Genesis chapter 11, it's the city of man. And then we have the city of God in an embryonic form of promise to Abraham in Genesis chapter 12. Friends, to become a Christian is to be changed. So you're no longer making decisions based on your own priorities and own convictions. You don't make decisions on the basis of what is most comfortable for me. What can make my life the most secure? Where can I be protected from harm and difficulty and risk? What's the job that will give me the best resources, the best pension pot, so that my influence and status can grow? You don't make decisions like that anymore if you're a Christian. The call of God, when it comes upon your life, shapes you with new priorities. So you should be asking yourself this question: where can I most be a blessing? Notice James reflecting on ministry yesterday. It's reframed his priorities. It's very helpful to hear that from him. Where can I be a blessing to other men and women in the church, to other men and women in our community? That's what the call of God does. And here's Abraham, and he's been given the call: get out of your country, get away from the temporary security of this world, and live for the real reality of a future city of God. This is how the call of God always works. To the degree that you're willing to get out of the familiar, leave behind the safe, leave behind the secure, redefine what's comfortable, God says, I will bless you to the degree that you are willing to get out so that you might be a blessing to other people. I'll appear to you, I'll come into your life. Do you really think Abraham did not want to stay in Harran with his family? Of course he did. They settled down there, and yet God had worked in his life, and the God of glory had appeared to him. And so in a cost-benefit analysis, he said, the God of glory is worth giving my life for. His country is worth journeying toward. His city is worth being a member of, rather than everything that this world has to offer. The call of God, when it comes into your life, makes you a cultural pilgrim. You've got one foot in this world, you're still living here, but you're longing for the future, you're longing for the heavenly, you're longing for the city of God, and it gives you new priorities. Now that's hard. You put under tension. But practically speaking, how in the world do you bring that reality into your life now? How do you receive the call? Well, let's look at that finally. How do you receive the call? Notice these promises in chapter 12, verses 1 to 3. Name. I'm going to make your name great. Name, nation, land, blessing. protection. But there was one promise underneath all those promises. It was the foundational promise. Abraham, who's going to have a nation, but if he's going to have a nation of people, first of all, he had to have a son. If he was going to have a great name and great reputation, if he was going to bless the peoples to the ends of the earth, first of all, he had to have a son. Everything came to the sonship. But Sarah was barren, verse 31 of chapter 11. Abraham was 75 years old and knocking on a bit. That meant that the son was going to have to be an act of miraculous grace. And here's what God says. Are you prepared to live with faith in the Son? He'll be the basis of every other promise. Now Isaac will point us to the real son, and we are in the same position. Here's what I mean. Look at Jesus afresh. He left the ultimate security of his Father's house. The New Testament says that Jesus became a nomad. He journeyed and he had nowhere to lie his head. Now, why did he do it? He did it so he could pay the penalty for our sins. He lost his father so that we could get his father. He left his family behind, the family of the Trinity, so that we could be brought into his family. And this is what Jesus is saying. If you realize I answered the original and the ultimate call away from security, so that you might have ultimate security. The ultimate security of knowing that you've been adopted by faith into the true family that will never let you down or never let you go. If you know that you're so loved in me, so secure in me, so accepted in me by faith, you will be able to live a life of faith as you journey to that city. You'll be able to surrender your will to a God who can always be trusted. That's the key. The son of promise, the one to whom Isaac points us to. You can be asked to follow Christ and your family thinks you're nuts. Maybe just like Abraham's. Sure, Terah was not keen for his son to journey with all his resources away to the land of Canaan. But Jesus Christ answered the call and he lost his father. My God, why have you forsaken me? In other words, if you see the cost that Jesus was willing to pay for you, we can lose our little securities when we see the security that he left behind for us, because we have ultimate security in him and from him. It's the call of God. You cannot overestimate the importance of these sentences to the whole Bible story. But it's the call of God that Abraham heard, Abraham surrendered to, and that we can hear and surrender to as well. And if we do, it will make us a bit like him.